We're going to start this video with a game. The game is this or that. This, on the left side of your screen, is always going to be core values. And that, on the right side of the screen, is always going to be a statement of teaching philosophy. Now, I know they're not big enough to really make out what they say, but I assure you, you'll be able to answer the questions anyway. There's only 5 of them. Which of these, this or that, do you think is going to be best understood by anybody? Which of these do you think could best motivate you and inspire you throughout the whole school year? Which of these do you think could best be shared with all the key stakeholders related to your job in the classroom? Students, parents, principals, support personnel, this or that. Which of them do you think could help you enact lasting change in your classroom? And finally, which of these do you think could best help you get hired in a new position at another school? So let's recap the results of that little game. Core values are easy one for everyone to understand. They can motivate and inspire you on the tough days. They could be easily shared with all the humans you serve because everybody understands them. And they can assist you in total classroom transformation if that's what you're going after. Core values are usually used in businesses and organizations where a lot of people need to get on the same page to accomplish a shared goal. In fact, your school probably has its own set of core values. Now, probably this has never been really introduced to us before because we're considered to be part of an organization. We rarely tend to think of ourselves as science teachers as people who are responsible for running our own organization. But that's really what we're doing in our classrooms. Now, teaching philosophies are probably something we're much more familiar with, thinking about, thinking through, and probably you've even written a few of them. They're best suited to get you another job because the only people who really can understand their depth and even the language that's used to write them and all the complexity that goes into the hows and whys we believe what we believe and teach and the experience are other educators. Now, teaching philosophies definitely are unique to individual educators, whereas core values are usually used to represent a group of people. In this video, I'm going to help you craft some core values that are unique to your interests and your experience, but lend themselves perfectly to inspiring and motivating you and your students all year long. This video is also the beginning of a short series to help you get to know me a little bit better and exactly what it took, the core values I had to establish in order to inspire and motivate myself to continue pushing forward into a complete, total science classroom transformation from one that was teacher-led to one that is completely student-centered. Now, if you watch to the end, you'll learn how to download a special planner I made just for you called Purposeful Plans, Powerful Results. And this is a guide to help you act on everything I'm talking about here today. Welcome, everyone. Whether you're a teacher in a science classroom or a parent supporting their child to learn science at home, this channel will provide you with inspiration and suggestions for teaching science the lab in every lesson way. That is through inquiry, with action, and using technology. Because we believe science is a superpower, one that can impart the skills our children need to make unbiased, informed decisions for the rest of their lives. We believe science is a life skill. Crafting core values for a classroom is totally a teacher reflection activity. Just like preparing a statement of teaching philosophy, coming up with keywords and descriptors that define you and your purpose is all about you. It's about knowing who you are, your talents, your gifts, your skills, and specific interests you have. It's also about knowing what you're not, what your potential is to grow and thrive. If you're anything like me, Knowing what you're not will come from your specific experience with students, with families, and maybe even in the school culture that you work in, or the specific approach they take to teaching and learning. Very quick side story. When I started teaching for my online cyber charter school 15 years ago, I definitely thought that this was going to be a school choice option for students like me who came from maybe small rural districts, who didn't have a whole lot of, I had no access to honors or AP classes growing up, and that this was an opportunity for them. I really expected to be working predominantly with an advanced learner. And when we're talking 15 years ago, present day is 2024, so I'm really talking to you like 2010-ish, when cybers were really just breaking out there. And what I found very, very quickly was that this is not a school choice option for those students. Those students are mostly excelling in their native school district, and if they're probably not even seeking out those other opportunities because they don't know they exist. However, cyber started becoming a popular choice option among and for students who were having a challenging time being successful in their native school district. And so school districts actually would recommend them to us. And I did not expect to work with the at-risk learner. It's taken me and continues to take me a great deal of time and patience and understanding, and it really challenges my everything. It really challenges my everything. It is such an incredibly difficult task, I think. But those are my areas where I can grow and thrive, was really in compassion. It was really in understanding. It was really in not being able to relate to the students with which I was charged to work. And you'll learn more about my personality in a little while, and over the series of videos I'll be posting this month, to get a better feel for exactly why that was such a challenge for me. And that's really what I want to shed light on here for you too today. Any obstacle that we face is created by us. We create our own limits. The reality is, opportunities are limitless. We impose limitations on ourselves and we don't even know it. Enter the Enneagram for educators. That's Enneagram. Like this video if you've never heard of the Enneagram before. My guess is that's a lot of you. The Enneagram is a widely accepted model of human psychology and personality theory that seeks to describe how each and every person has an innate and unique personality. An essence that shapes the way they see the world and themselves. There are 9 Enneagram personality types, and each of them is comprised of a unique combination of strengths and weaknesses, unconscious motivations, fears, and triggers that shape our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Today, I'm going to focus my discussion on how the Enneagram and understanding your unique personality type can help you understand yourself better in your classroom, in a career environment. But understanding and studying the Enneagram, even for myself, has been kind of transformational when it comes to personal life, emotional growth, even spiritual growth. But it really does take us doing the hard work of accepting that we have weaknesses, that there are areas for us to improve in, and that we aren't perfect. But remembering all along that those weaknesses, they are limitations we've created ourselves unknowingly. And so since we've created them ourselves, we can transform them from weaknesses to strengths. I want to take this opportunity right now to remind you again that I have a freebie download available for you that I worked really hard on. This video and everything I'm going to share in the remainder of our time together is very, very surface knowledge. I expect you during this video to go, I see, I get it, that's interesting. But if you download this freebie, you're going to take action on this information. You're going to be able to access my go-to references. And honestly, I visit them frequently just to remind myself, even when I'm having a tough moment, I am who I am and they are who they are, and we're all going to get through this together. Now, for the remainder of this video, I'm going to actually walk you through those 9 Enneagram personality types, but I'm not just going to present them because, there's going to be a huge urge, a huge temptation for you to proclaim what you are as soon as you see it. They all have titles. You're going to gravitate to certain things and think that's you. And then you're going to see the strengths and weaknesses and think that's you until I present the second and the third and the fourth. And then you're going to be like, what now? I'm a 1 and a 2 and a 3. How do I know what I am? Right? So what I try to do actually is create classroom scenarios. What does this teacher look like in practice? So maybe you can relate better on that level. But when you do think you've hit the nail on the head, share in the comments below exactly what you think you are as an Enneagram type. I think we're going to find that we are all very different, and that's okay. Let's get started. Are you the type of teacher who can create killer lesson plans, really organized, really well structured, but you have a tendency to be very self-critical or unnecessarily overcritical with your students? If so, you might be the reformer. The reformer is going to be someone who is very detail-oriented and focused on high standards, very conscientious. You're going to have a very strong sense of right and wrong and a very powerful ethical motivation behind what you do. You are a person of integrity and obviously organized and methodical in your approaches. That's what makes you a great lesson planner. Some of the things that might trip you up along the way in your work are perfectionism, the struggle that you have with flexibility and being overly critical on yourself, or rigidity, difficulty adapting to unexpected changes, things that in a classroom can, anything can happen in the classroom. And then finally, that self-critical piece. So perfectionism, rigidity, and self-critical, honestly, to me, those are all very, very similar descriptors, very, very similar characteristics, but they do slightly mean different things. You can be a perfectionist and be very haughty in your character, very ego-driven, very prideful, or you could be this self-critical. So they are not one and the same, but they do often go together. We see them together, and this is where the Enneagram is validated. Maybe you're type 2. You find yourself to be very empathetic. Not sympathetic, empathetic. You're very attentive to student needs. It's coming from the heart. So much so that you might sacrifice your own self-care or forget to care for your own heart needs because you're reaching out so much in such a profound way to care for that of your students. If so, type 2, you are the helper. Now, the helper is obviously going to have those character strengths of caring and being empathetic, compassionate. Also generous, willing to go above and beyond to support others. You want to feed all of the hungry kids. You want to clothe all the hungry kids. You want to give them all the love and attention. You want to solve all of their home problems. You want to save them. You create warm and nurturing classroom environments. Your students probably love you because they learn to trust you. You've built great relationships with them. But the way in which you do this might be actually over-involving yourself or involving yourself in areas where you don't belong or you truly can't help. You might struggle to set boundaries with students or with families or maybe even with other staff, faculty at your school. You tend to seek approval also. You find a need or feel a need for validation from other people, including students. Of course, then one of those big things is neglecting yourself. To focus so much on others that you overlook or trivialize your own challenges and your own personal stuff that you're going through. That brings us to type 3. That's me. Are you the teacher who sets super high standards for your students? has great expectations for them, and is willing to inspire and motivate them through to those high goals. But you sometimes feel there's a challenge to connect on another level, that you're focused on their achievement and all the academic stuff, and maybe you overlook or can't quite connect on another personal level. If so, you're me. You're the achiever. Character strengths there include that you are very goal-oriented. Speaking as a type 3, I'm going to say I don't want to do anything if it's not got a good purpose. And if I'm told to do something, I have to create and convince myself of the purpose. If I don't have one, it ain't happening. You're ambitious and driven towards success. You're confident. You inspire students with a can-do attitude. You are adaptable and skilled at adjusting to meet your objectives efficiently. Being goal-oriented, being confident, and being adaptable, again, when worked together, it's really all about going after and trying to get to the finish line. Whatever it takes, as long as we're reaching that goal. And in doing that, some of the challenges we have and can feel actually in our day-to-day work are a sense of who is an onlooker and what do they think of this. You tend to be a little image conscious. You're concerned with appearances and maybe success. You have a workaholic tendency too. You're so goal-oriented. You want to get the thing done. You want to see it through that, again, you neglect yourself. But this is a different type of self-care neglect than the helper has, because the helper is all caring for the needs of someone else, and the achiever is trying to get the job done. Also, impatience comes to play because sometimes goals are long-term goals, not short-term goals, and certainly achievement, certainly in complex science classes like you and I teach, it could take a lot of patience to get there. Difficulty with slower paced activities or setbacks could throw you for a total loop. Do you instead, type 4, maybe align yourself with a more creative mind, a more emotional understanding of like everything. It's not about books. It's not about goals. It's not about people. It's about, again, like abstract thought. And if it is, sometimes you might struggle with the practicality of something like a lesson plan, or any strategy that is sort of more organized, like the reformer, more structured because you think outside the box. If so, you're the individualist. The individualist brings creativity, emotional depth, and authenticity. Unique perspectives and ideas come to life in your teaching. You can connect deeply with students' feelings and their experiences. Now, that's not to say you're caring for them like the helper. You see how these are similar yet different. You are connecting because you're the feeler, but you're not necessarily trying to save their world. There's a difference, and it's so subtle. You value self-expression, and you encourage students to be true to themselves. But with this, like every other personality type, comes some challenges, one of which is moodiness. Our abstract thinkers, really in touch with their feelings, their emotional side, tend to be a little wayward. You have emotional highs and lows. You are prone to self-absorption, so you kind of focus on personal feelings and experiences rather than maybe focus on the whole. And finally, idealism. Those practical things, those routine tasks, they are a bummer. You just don't see why they're necessary, and you really have trouble aligning with them. Our fifth type is again kind of similar to the achiever, and it's called the investigator. Now, you're an investigator if you are all in on intellectual rigor. You are smarty pants. You encourage inquiry, but you have to put so much extra effort into creating emotional connection with students. I can relate to this a little bit. Just a quick side story before I tick off all of the characteristics here. Because the achiever and the investigator are so similar, I can tell you in the company I worked for before I became a teacher, I was at the boundary between research and manufacturing. So I was technically research and development, but I worked with the college educated people over here to define formulations and do background research. And then I would literally cross the middle of the building to go to the manufacturing side and set up those formulations and determine how non-college educated technicians would prepare them. And I actually loved those people. They came to all my wedding. We became great friends. But they would often joke with me when I hadn't been in the lab for a while, and I would come over to make my formulation. I would come in the room. I was friendly enough, but they would make these jokes, and they would say things like, she's all business, here comes business, because I was just so focused. That's my goal-orientedness, but it was also the intellectual part of me coming through. We're the book smarty people here, we're the investigators. Some common characteristics, strengths that you have would be you're so stinking smart. You're knowledgeable. You can retain all the information you've learned and you deeply understand it. And you're willing to share that expertise. But you're also very analytical. So you don't just take things at face value. You want to research them. You want to problem solve them. You want to troubleshoot them. And you're very independent in doing that. It's not to say you're not a team player, but you can work on your own, and maybe you even prefer to work on your own. You value autonomy. You like to be able to be given the time and space to do your own thing, and you encourage critical thinking in students. See, this is what I mean when I say you don't really know your type until you know your type. And I would only really trust some sort of quiz to help you validate that, because as I'm working through this with you, and I know I've taken the quiz multiple times, I am an achiever, type 3. But I would choose, probably runner-up is the investigator, because I know those things about me. I tend to be so focused on facts and figures, which is why Lab in Every Lesson exists. Because it was my own challenge that I had to overcome from being that content authority and just shelling out information to my students and transforming it to actively give them something to do that could actually connect us. So I want you to also think through this. When you get thinking through this deeply, you can start thinking of the approaches you take in your classroom can be a way to grow and thrive in your weaknesses. So some weaknesses of the investigator include that you can sometimes be withdrawn. You tend to be reserved or maybe distant. Maybe you're not super approachable by your students. Maybe you don't have great relationships with your students, but it's not because of the way you interact with them, but it's because you don't seem accessible. You're overly private and reluctant to share personal information. Maybe you don't talk much about your family life or your home life or your personal life or your hobbies with your kiddos. Maybe they don't understand you at all as a person with a real life, but just as a teacher who is got a super huge big brain. And so withdrawn, overly private, sometimes detached. Difficult to make those connections. On to type 6 now. You're type 6 if you are, I'm going to call you a people person. That's my own editorial here. You're a people person with students. You're a people person with staff. You're in it. You're all about trust. You're all about reliability. You want people to trust you. You want to trust people. You want to be thought of as reliable. You want to be able to rely on people. Unfortunately, when working with people, it's a mixed bag. Cats all the time. And so sometimes we have unexpected things arise that can create anxiety and disappointment. If you're a type 6 and you're this type of, again, now this is kind of sort of the same sort of feeling person as the helper and one other type we described here. It's very, the artistic one, the individualist. Yeah, but in a different way. You're more of a team player, and you expect that teamwork feel to come back at you. So some character strengths in the loyalist include loyalty. No way. You're so committed to supporting students and colleagues. You're prepared. You anticipate challenges and you plan ahead. Why? Because you want to be trusted. You want to be found reliable. And you are safety conscious. Oh my, this might be my husband. He is so risk averse. You create a secure and stable classroom atmosphere. Now, again, okay, just a reminder, we're all supposed to create a safe, warm, trusting classroom atmosphere. Every single one of you out there listening to me should go, check. Yeah, we're all doing that. But some of us are more concerned with it than others. Some weaknesses in this character profile are anxiety, because you're prone to worry and overthinking. You're really concerned that trust is going to be broken, that reliability isn't going to be there. You're dependent. You seek the reassurance and guidance from others because you've invested so much in trusting them, in relying on them, and being relied upon. And for that reason, you are overly cautious. So this is where the safety thing comes in. So basically, do you see this? You're prepared, but you're dependent. You're safety conscious, but you are overly cautious. So sometimes our weaknesses in these profiles are just an extreme of our strength. I had a type 7 teacher when I was in school. He was super fun. Type 7 teachers, if this is you, you're going to be exciting and creative, and you're going to spark enthusiasm, and that's like your goal. That's what you want to do. You're spontaneous, but just like the individualist, that other artsy, abstract kind of personality, you too will have difficulty with establishing boundaries, being more structured. It's something you have to consciously think about and work into because you have to, because we have to make lesson plans. And whereas some of us shine in the lesson plan area and the delivery is kind of like, boring, you are so super exciting. Students love you for that. But they might lose engagement over time just because they get lost in it. Achievement might suffer because they're like, what am I even doing? I am all caught up in it's the sizzle, not the steak. I had a boyfriend that told me once I was all about the sizzle and not the steak. That is type 7. Type 7 is called the enthusiast. And your character strengths are your energy, your adventurousness, and your optimism. You are a favorite in the school because you're exciting and you bring positivity and you're new and different and fresh. You're engaging and you inspire students because you show them possibility and you embrace challenge. But with the good comes the bad. And some of the weaknesses to this personality include impulsiveness, difficulty to follow through on a long-term thing because you're so energetic and in the moment and spontaneous, avoidance of pain. So you might even be the jokester in a difficult situation because you just don't want to confront that difficult situation. And restless. When you have so much energy, some of us have so much energy, we just can't contain it. If you're type 7, you honestly might be the person who taps their foot a lot or crosses the leg and bounces their leg up and down. You're literally never really sitting still. On to type 8, the challenger. Now, as a challenger in the classroom, type 8, you are all about empowering students and advocating for them to be leaders. You are probably the club advisor for a cultural group or an activism group. We're talking like environmental activists, social activists. You're like, get out there and change the world. And sometimes you need to find some balance there with sensitivity for students who don't have that gene, because we don't all have that gene. As a challenger, you have obvious character strengths, such as leadership, advocacy, and you have courage. And I think that's the thing that's going to be so intimidating to students. As a leader, you're going to be assertive and decisive, and you're all about guiding your students, but you're firm. You stand up for their rights and their needs, and they love and appreciate you for that. But your courageousness and the model you are of resilience and determination, while so awe-inspiring, can often feel intimidating. And so your weaknesses in this case, and as in so many of the other cases for the personality traits we've discussed in the various personality types, tend to be like extremes of your strengths. Things like bluntness. Sometimes to be a leader and full of courage and advocacy, you tend to just be direct. And a lot of people can't handle direct. Trust me, I know. I tend to be a little direct myself. Because remember, we all have little bits of all these personalities. But being too direct can turn people off. Maybe you have a little bit of controlling, or you're perceived as controlling because you prefer to be in charge, and maybe you don't always ask for everybody else's input. And you're intense. You're intense, and people can sense your intenseness. You're frustrated by things that go wrong, or inefficiency, or obstacles. Maybe not the picture of patience. And so those are the things that you find you need to balance when you are being this outstanding leader, this great advocate, even though your intentions are so fantastic because you want to change the world and you want our next generation to follow suit. You have to be really conscious about the way in which you push that along in our little humans. And the last one we have to talk about today is type 9. And I just have to tell you, and I have to tell you a little story before I talk about type 9, actually, because in reviewing the character traits of type 9, it dawned on me that I should have started this video talking about the Divergent series. Divergent movies and books. The books came first, then the movies. So let me give you context, and I think this is great. The Divergent story is all about post-apocalyptic world where there were 5 factions, and each faction was basically like a personality. You came of a certain age and you had to choose a faction you would be, and you were given a test to determine which one you landed in. So it's kind of almost mocking this whole Enneagram thing, truly, because there was Dauntless, which was bravery. There was Candor, which was honesty. There was Erudite, which was very intellectual, and Abnegation, which was the helper at the cost of yourself. Give your life to help your brother. And Amity. So we get to talk about type 9, the peacemaker. All I can think of is Amity. Amity is calm, collected, all about peace and harmony. I'm thinking like your hobby or your alternative job someday might be yoga teacher, because you are just so all about the Zen. But because of that, anything that is too loosey-goosey, especially in a classroom, is going to require you to focus a lot on the structure that has to happen when we're leading little beings, and when we're trying to comply with admin expectations as well, and all that formality that comes with lesson planning and things like that. So your peacemaker character traits include strengths: harmony, patience, mediation. Okay, harmony speaks for itself. You like cooperation and inclusivity. You like everybody to get along. You don't like the cliquey thing you see the teenagers do in your classroom. Maybe you're really into collaborative learning for that reason. You're patient. You listen attentively. You wait and you wait and you wait. You may not even have any due dates on your assignments because you're just like, yeah, as long as you do it, I am happy-pappy. But then you have this unique characteristic of mediation because you want peace. And so you're going to maybe even try to positively force it. Encourage and model for students how to get that done. Resolving conflict and fostering unity. With those super positive traits, they're very positive traits and probably diminished in the world right now. You can always get a sense of the opposite, it seems like, on too many days. Weaknesses include avoidance. You tend to procrastinate or shy away from confrontation. Indecisiveness, struggling with making firm decisions because why? You don't want to upset the apple cart. and passivity. You'd rather go with the flow than serve yourself. It's more important for you to everyone to be happy than you be happy. And that might be an extreme statement, okay? And again, we are all a little bit of these things. When I think of myself in my personal life and here in my home with my children, my family, I adopt a peacemaker role more than some other roles that we've described today. Coming back here to this divergent analogy, in the divergent story, throughout the story, from the very beginning, when you took this test to determine what faction you should belong to, even though ultimately it was your choice, they could tell if you were divergent, which meant you had a little bit of all of them. And throughout the first 2/3, I think, of the series, that was a bad thing. Until they found out, hey, they were actually created to be that way and, solve the world problems because they have balance. And so I want to say again that no one expects that you're going to fit in this perfect little box. And that's not the reason I'm presenting this today. The reason I'm presenting this today is because being uniquely you in your classroom is critical to inspiring lifelong learning in our students. And to be uniquely, you're going to be uniquely you all the time, but to understand what that uniquely you is and to model your own lifetime learning, your own lifelong learning, is invaluable. And now you might be thoroughly confused, as I almost promised you would be. So because you feel like, wow, I'm all these different types. Be sure to download my planner called Purposeful Plans, Powerful Results. You can get that at www.labineverylesson.com/core values. But I have one final word for you, and that is don't fall into the comparison trap. There aren't a whole lot of personality traits here for which comparing yourself to someone else was a weakness, but I'm a type 3, and I feel that really, really strongly. As an image conscious weakness that I have, I do tend to think with a competitive sort of nature, I kind of think like one must be better than the other, or, I wish I had that trait instead of this trait. And the reality is that we are all part of one body. In your school, there are all 9 types of teachers, and your students are being served by all of them. So what is your trash is someone else's treasure. We can make the same analogy here. What is your weakness is someone else's strength. And in bringing our best every day. But bringing our best requires that we do the hard work of personal growth. If we bring our best every day to our students, they're getting the most perfect, well-rounded experience possible.